As you know, for every Eon and path, there is a Lord Ravager assigned to destroy it. Celanova is targeting the Harmony, Zephyro is after the Nihility, and Archforger has their sights on the Preservation. During the 3.7 story, as we are dealing with the threat of irontomb, we actually learn that the IPC have their hands full with another Ravager, Archforger. The Ravager has caused them so much grief that not only can the IPC no longer come to our aid, but it has also drawn the attention of the IPC board and its executives. To go up against the largest company in the universe, as well as defeat one of the oldest Eons, is no small task, but this is precisely what Archforger plans to do. So the question is, how exactly will the Ravager take down the Preservation? Will they face qlipoth directly and overpower them with superior weaponry, or will they flood the market with knockoffs to destabilize the IPC? That's what we'll be talking about in this video. To start off, let's talk about their origins first. The earliest mention of Archforger in-game actually comes from the Archenemies list curated by the Shanzhou Alliance. At the time, this Lord Ravager was only referred to as the Antimatter Ravager, as the locations they visited were often left bereft of anything save for antimatter. During the events of Amphoreus, two society members managed to decode their name from the gravitational waves released by Irontomb, and we learned that the Antimatter Ravager was in fact Archforger, the architect of the Legion. After this reveal, their name was only mentioned once in 3.7 by Aventurine. When Himeko was in search of allies, the IPC mentioned that they could not come to the Nameless's aid in full force due to Archforger. Aventurine claims that the Ravager had attracted the attention of the IPC board, though we don't know how or why, as Aventurine was rather guarded with this information. While the rest of the universe knows this Ravager only by name at this point, we learn quite a bit more about them thanks to the Myriad Celestia trailer. In terms of appearance, Archforger appears as a giant, rusty red mecha with what appears to be 3 miniature suns embedded within them. The true scale and size of Archforger is difficult to determine as they are often shown in shadows and darkness, but they appear to be at least as large as mountains that reach the upper atmosphere of an unnamed planet. Archforger is often referred to as the architect of the Legion because they are largely responsible for not only manufacturing weapons for the Legion, but also their armies. There is law that suggests that Archforger forcibly turns the enemies of destruction into Void Rangers, twisting and corrupting any living creature and bending them to the will of destruction. It's very likely that the Ravager imbues these unwilling candidates with antimatter, which is why most Legion enemies we face implode violently after death. Aside from that, Archforger also develops and manufactures weapons that the Legions of Destruction use, and they do this from the planet of Warforge. For all intents and purposes, Archforger is the master smith of destruction. Now, because they have focused most of their time in the manufacture of weapons and equipment, Archforger doesn't often grace the battlefields with their presence. Instead of attacking a planet or system like the other Ravagers, Archforger instead creates weapons of mass extinction and hands them off to the Agents of Destruction. This is a trait they share with their quarry, the Eon of Preservation, as both tend to focus on building things rather than using their creations outright. The difference being that Archforger's creations only destroy, while qlipoth's creations are intended to protect. In their description within the Galactic Archives, it's mentioned that Archforger focuses more on crafting things after their ascension, something the IPC strongly condemns. This specific call out to the IPC makes me wonder if Archforger has some shared origins with the IPC themselves. Perhaps in the past, they were once some form of AI-driven mega factory developed by the IPC, but has since been given the gift of ruin by Nanook. It would be pretty ironic if the bane of the IPC is literally a robot they themselves built to maximize profits, only that now it has been reprogrammed to maximize death. In fact, it's hinted that much of the disagreement between Oswaldo and Diamond is related to Archforger, and with how secretive Aventurine is, perhaps the IPC want to keep this under wraps from the rest of the universe. But that's a whole other discussion, and the topic of this video is not where they came from, but rather how they will accomplish their mission. Speaking of other theories, I often cover different topics on lore for this type of games on my channel. So if you're interested in that, consider checking it out and perhaps subscribing. Now, among all the factions of Star Rail, the target of Archforger is without a doubt one of the most challenging. Qlipoth is one of the oldest eons in existence, having ascended around the time of the Dusk Wars and has survived multiple battles by this point. They are thought by some to be one of the most powerful eons that currently exist. Their followers are also quite numerous and largely influential. The IPC, for example, are without a doubt one of the most powerful factions we've met thus far, given they control a large portion of the galactic economy and is stated to have one of the largest spacefaring fleets in the galaxy. The architects, along with qlipoth, make it a hobby to develop galaxy-spanning defensive structures in line with the path of preservation. But it goes beyond this, as a universe that is filled with war and battles will also be filled with people that have the instinct to defend themselves and survive, which all feeds into the path of preservation. Put simply, those associated with preservation are no pushovers, despite their seemingly more passive and defensive nature. So if you were Archforger and had the unenviable task of destroying preservation, how would you go about doing it? Well, I think there are a couple of ways they could go about it. A rather indirect approach would perhaps be going after the path that feeds qlipoth by destroying their followers. As a 3D printing machine of destruction, Archforger may try to take the fight to the IPC first by continuously and rapidly producing a large number of weapons to overwhelm them. By destroying the IPC fleet, they will no longer have the means to keep their regions of space defended, and this is where it will hit the IPC the hardest. As these regions become lawless and undefended, trade will inevitably decrease. Credit is the lifeblood of the IPC, and with less and less trade, the IPC will eventually fall into an overhead crisis. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who work for the IPC, and like any business, in order to keep growing, they need to continue making money. If trade slows down, then the IPC won't be able to support their company any further. Now, you might ask, what would destroying the IPC do? I mean, qlipoth largely ignores the IPC anyway, so if Archforger wants to defeat the Eon, why bother with the IPC? Well, it's largely due to how the paths work. As these IPC-controlled regions of space become harder to defend, it actually undermines the path of preservation itself, which in turn weakens qlipoth. In addition, as more and more IPC-controlled planets fall, qlipoth would start to lose followers, and as people's emotions turn into fear, less power is fed into the path of preservation. So this could be phase 1 of Archforger's plan that starts by weakening the Eon first before going after the Eon themselves. Perhaps at the end of a long and protracted campaign of undermining the path of preservation, Archforger will then unleash their ultimate weapon aimed squarely at the head of qlipoth, assuming qlipoth actually has a head. Now, taking out the supporters of qlipoth before taking out the orange giant themselves is a reasonable approach. But you have to remember that the Ravagers are a bunch of chaotic destroyers and might go straight for the gods themselves. So an alternative idea is one where Archforger takes the more direct route and attacks qlipoth while their army distracts the IPC. I like the symbology behind this potential fight, given qlipoth's ideals and actions are based on defending and protecting others, while as a manufacturer of weapons, Archforger is all about offense. This confrontation is also like the embodiment of the question of what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Would Archforger's antimatter-based weaponry triumph over qlipoth's defensive constructs, or would the Eon's construction projects be able to withstand the power of a Ravager? I mean, this would be similar to what Irontomb was trying to accomplish, as they went straight for Nous and wasn't interested in eradicating erudition itself, though that could be mostly due to Xandar's own goals. In any case, given Archforger is made out to be the smith of the Legion, I envision they would want to destroy qlipoth in the most fitting way possible, by showing that their defensive structures pale in comparison to the overwhelming power of destruction's weaponry. Now, this last idea is one that I wanted to include just because I thought it was funny. We know that Archforger is functionally the craftsman of destruction, having equipped them with all manner of weaponry and gear. What we don't know is how they accomplish this, but I like to think that they are a living, sentient 3D printer who is capable of taking in materials and just churning out equipment and items. While we are told that they are just producing weapons for the Legion, what if they can produce more than that? Using their ability for mass production and meta synthesization, perhaps their approach to taking down the IPC and qlipoth is by hitting them where it hurts the most, their wallets. If Archforger is indeed a giant 3D printer, what if they are mass producing everything the IPC are selling? From medical equipment to industrial tools, Archforger is creating a knockoff version and flooding the intergalactic market with it entirely for free. These ruinous counterfeits will cannibalize the IPC sales and hit them in their bottom line. If everyone decides to jump ship and use Archforger brand items, then the IPC would lose revenue. Without constant income, the IPC would eventually implode and fail as shareholders cash out before the share prices tank. I mean, think about it. When Irontomb was threatening to destroy the entire universe, the IPC basically went, nope, we've got an even bigger problem to deal with. What could be worse than the destruction of the entire universe that even got the attention of the IPC board? Of course, it's their bottom line, profit margins, and bonuses. Plus, the possibility of them spreading knockoffs to consumers could turn out to be far more dangerous than you might expect. Imagine if every planet and domicile in the universe has an Archforger brand good. The Ravager could simply trigger the antimatter within them, causing immense destruction across the cosmos. This might allow them to take out entire star systems, given even a little antimatter can react violently with regular matter. Even their name is sort of a clue. I mean, they are called Archforger. Wouldn't it be funny if the great and mighty IPC is defeated because of fake goods and knockoffs? There are no big battles, no intergalactic conflicts, just counterfeits distributed to willing users. I think this would be a fitting juxtaposition to the greed that is ingrained within the IPC. But this sounds too silly to be true, so this idea is the least likely. I just thought it was funny if some version of this became true, so I just wanted to include it here as a reminder that I have no idea what I'm talking about. In any case, it's still quite early in the story to start speculating about what this particular Ravager would do with qlipoth. It might be a long while before we revisit the IPC and have a story focused around them, so for now this is just a bit of fun. If you were Archforger and tasked with taking down the preservation, how would you do it? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found the video entertaining, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and as usual, have a nice day.